Hi everybody, and welcome to another Weathercast USA Quickcast. On this Quickcast, we're going to break down the short-term severe threat over the next couple days, and then look at a pattern switch that brings another building heat dome across portions of the west, as well as into the northern plains over the weekend and stretching into at least next week. So let's get into it. First, here's a look at the current conditions Wednesday morning, July 8th, 2026. You can see here we have a couple showers still from ongoing convection from last night across the northern plains. Most of that is fading, but there still is a lot of cloud cover and some outflow boundaries from earlier convection that will help spark a new development later, along with a bit of a mid-level shortwave, as well as a frontal boundary draped along this region. So we do have that to watch later. That'll spark another round of severe weather, stretching from the central plains into the northern plains and even portions of the Great Lakes later this afternoon. We also have some storms already starting to bubble up across the mid-south, the Ohio Valley. There is another bit of a stalled, degraded frontal boundary across that region, adding a little extra lift and convergence to that region. So already a couple lightning strikes showing up and some isolated scattered storms starting to go up. You can see that system that brought flooding rains to portions of the mid-Atlantic and northeast over the weekend has moved offshore. You can see that little bit of a swirl in the clouds there. Most of that precipitation associated with that system is offshore. Some skirting a little bit of coastal Canada and still a little bit of activity just off the outer banks this morning. But most of that will continue to work away. And it's going to be another hot and humid day across the south and Gulf Coast. Already seeing a few storms bubbling up there, especially in coastal areas along the northern Gulf, portions of southern Louisiana, the Florida Panhandle, maybe getting towards coastal Alabama, coastal Mississippi, a little bit into Texas. Already starting to see some of those afternoon, daytime heating, general thunderstorms pop up in those warm and humid environments. But overall, things are fairly quiet for the morning hours. It's going to be the afternoon and into the evening where things start to percolate and get a little bit feisty with severe weather chances. So going into the afternoon and evening of Wednesday, July 8th, 2026, here's a look at the current SPC outlook as of the morning hours. And you can see a level 1 marginal risk in the portions of the mid-Atlantic, the Carolinas, and into southern Virginia. But the main risk area stretches from the Great Lakes back across the northern plains and into the high plains, as well as portions of the Intermountain West. You can see a large level 1 risk stretching from Montana back through portions of Idaho and even portions of Nevada and northern Utah, back across the plains and into the areas in Michigan. That's a level 1 out of 5. Within that, there is the slight risk. That's the yellow shaded area. And that does concern areas from Wisconsin, southern Minnesota, back across Iowa, northern and western portions of Kansas, eastern portions of Colorado, extreme southeast portions of Wyoming, and then back into a lot of Nebraska. That area is a level 2 out of 5, slight risk. A little more concentration of some strong to severe thunderstorms in that region. And then the higher probabilities for severe weather back across eastern Colorado, extreme northwestern Kansas, and southwestern Nebraska. I feel like the last month or so, we've talked a lot about this region with the rounds of severe weather. So another day where severe weather is on the table. That area is enhanced mostly for a wind-driven risk, and we'll take a look at the probabilities of each of those different severe hazards. First, going to the tornado risk, there is a 2% tornado risk across portions of southern Minnesota, much of central and southwest Wisconsin, and then to northern and central portions of Iowa. This is 2% within 25 miles of a location within this risk area. And I do think there is a possibility, a little bit more than yesterday, that we do see some tornadic chances today. With a little bit added complexity. There's a frontal system across here, a little bit of a short wave that dives through. So we do have a little bit of upper level support as well as the surface support. And then there's some outflow boundaries from yesterday's storms kind of draped across this region that may add a little bit of extra low level spin and just kind of concentrate a little bit more activity there. The main threat today does appear to be more of a linear mode, but if any supercells develop within multi-cell clusters or out ahead of the main line segment, that's where our best chance of a tornado or two is likely. And then here's the largest severe threat for today. It's the wind risk. Low wind risk, but not zero. that's driving the marginal threat across the North Carolina and Southern Virginia areas. And then going back into the plains and the Midwest and also into the Northern Rockies and Intermountain West, you can see that large area of 5% wind risk. Anywhere in there could have some isolated damaging wind gusts, 58 miles an hour or greater. And yeah, so look out for that, especially in areas of the Front Range. Within that, you can see there is now, this is a little bit of an upgrade from last night. Within that slight risk in the yellow, that's a 15% damaging wind risk. But they have upgraded those portions into southwest portions of Nebraska, eastern Colorado, and northwestern Kansas with 30% probabilities for damaging winds. So that is a 30% chance of damaging wind gusts within 25 miles of a location in there. So a little bit higher chances of seeing damaging winds. More concentrated severe weather is expected across these regions. And then, to add to that, we have this new conditional intensity guidance that the Storm Prediction Center started doing in early March of this year. And that is a conditional intensity level 1. That means that some wind gusts in this area, in the hatched area, could be in that hurricane force range, 74 miles an hour. Let's just say kind of 70 to 80 mile an hour range. Could have some scattered gusts in that kind of intensity level. Where that conditional intensity intersects with the higher probabilities, that's according to the new conditional intensity system, with the higher probabilities and the conditional intensity 1, that is basically auto-categorized for an enhanced risk. So that's why we have that enhanced risk, and it looks a little weird because it's kind of a chunk of the higher wind probabilities. It's that overlay of the conditional intensity that's driving that enhanced risk across those regions of the central high plains. And then hail is not that big of a factor this afternoon. There is a 5% chance of hail all the way from Montana, a lot of the Front Range, and then stretching out into areas of the upper Midwest, back across the Central Plains. I do think if there are some isolated, more discrete cells that could add to a little bit of hail chances, and if we get any larger hail, I think it may be in this corridor kind of right in here. Otherwise, not a large hail threat day, and that primary threat are the damaging wind gusts. And there's again the damaging wind threat for today. So going into Thursday, the front that we're focusing on in the Central Plains into the upper Midwest sags a little bit further to the south and east. So we get another day of some slight risk of severe weather, stretching from the lower Missouri Valley across the southern Great Lakes, portions of the Northeast, especially in the St. Lawrence Valley, and then a little more concentrated area there, a slight risk across southern portions of Illinois, southern Indiana, back into the Ohio Valley, and then stretching across from St. Louis to near Kansas City, a slight risk of severe weather tomorrow. We do have a little bit of an isolated severe chance, again, back into the Mid-Atlantic, area that's had some rounds of severe storms over the last week to 2 weeks. And then we look again back into the Central Plains, but also especially the high plains of the Front Range for more storm development, another damaging wind threat. And that's pretty typical this time of year. We get lee side troughing off the Front Range of the Rockies. That leads to clusters of thunderstorms upscaling and pushing east into the high plains and some of the adjacent plains. And yeah, in kind of a rinse and repeat through the day, daytime heating piles up some instability across the Front Range, and clusters of storms develop and propagate to the east. So another day of that looks like tomorrow. I'm surprised there's right now not a tornado risk for tomorrow. I wouldn't be surprised though if the Storm Prediction Center does add a tornado risk for tomorrow, especially across southern Illinois, maybe into the Wabash Valley a little bit, just with a little bit extra vorticity there in the atmosphere and a little bit extra spin. Here's the wind risk for tomorrow right now. You can see the slight risk areas overall match the wind-driven risks here. So wind is the primary hazard again on Wednesday as well as into Thursday. And I wouldn't also be surprised if we get a little bit of upgrading with probabilities, especially across the areas there in the high plains. Similar to today, where the Storm Prediction Center upgraded a portion of that to conditional intensity level 1 and the higher probabilities of 30%. Somewhere in here, there could be, some upgrade with some morning observations and things that gives a little bit of higher confidence to potentially some clusters of damaging winds across these areas. But just don't be shocked if you do see some, like today, an upgrade of probabilities and or the conditional intensity guidance in those areas. And then hail is a little bit bigger of a factor tomorrow. You can see that again in some of those same areas along the Front Range and the adjacent high plains. And that's what I was saying. I think even like today could have a couple larger hailstones. And then going out to Friday, this could change a little bit, but as that front continues to kind of sag and stall across the central US, across the mid-Atlantic, we do see a level 1 out of 5 marginal risk across portions of the Central Plains into the Ozarks and even into the Mid-South by Friday. So again, that's kind of a rough outline of where the potential for severe weather is for Friday, but based on different observations from surface observations closer to the event, as well as any ongoing residual boundaries and things and clusters of storms that may be ongoing, that may adjust a little bit the intensity, but also the location. So just keep an eye on this forecast for Friday. It will likely change before then. And before we get back to a look at the continental US, I do want to pay attention to Super Typhoon Bavi still prowling across the Pacific. And you can see it is still a very well-organized tropical cyclone. It is still the equivalent of a Category 4 storm right now. With the latest observations this morning, it was moving at west-northwest at 12 miles an hour with a maximum sustained winds of 145 miles an hour. So still in that Category 4, solidly in the Category 4 intensity. And you can see here, this is a look at the means of most of the major model runs. This is not every single model. This is the mean of those models. There is a pretty incredible model consistency for Bavi's current track. All of the major models take it and start to pull it more towards the north-northwest, and generally across some of those southern islands of the Japanese archipelago, and then also very close to northern portions of Taiwan, including some of the major mega cities like Taipei, and then on into areas in China. So this could be potentially a historic storm, but also impacting millions and millions of people, some very highly populated, very developed parts of the world. And again, this is just the mean. So within that, there is a broader fan. Some of this could work directly more towards Taipei and Taiwan. Some of this could pull a little more towards Shanghai and those areas. There's a much wider path. It's just a little bit easier to just show you the means of all the different models, especially when they're all in a fairly tight group like that, that shows that consistency. This between the different models is only about 141 miles difference from the mean that's furthest to the north to the cluster of means that's furthest to the south. So yeah, there's quite a bit of model consistency here and agreement that it is going to affect, in general, areas in Taiwan, areas in far southern Japanese islands, and then also likely into mainland China. So if you do have interests over in that part of the world, do take that into consideration. It does look like it's mostly going to be north of the Philippines, but especially some of these northern areas of the Philippines, it's going to be nasty weather, but it does look like the main part of this tropical cyclone, this super typhoon, is going to continue to turn a little bit more away from the Philippines, more towards that north-northwest track. It's dark over there right now at the time of filming this, so unfortunately I don't have a clear visual satellite image for you, but this is the infrared satellite image, and showing a very impressive storm with some very high cloud tops, a very well-defined and symmetric eye. And yeah, it's been an impressive looking storm on satellite, and especially when it was passing the Guam and the Northern Mariana Islands on also radar. And yeah, this beast is closing in on some very populated areas. So now looking into a little bit of the parameters behind the severe event today, here's a look at the 700 millibar wind speeds, and this just highlights some of that little shortwave activity that's working across the upper Midwest, going to help spark a little bit of that severe activity this afternoon and into the evening. Also showing up in the 700 millibar vorticity, showing some of that spin in the atmosphere, and you can see that holding in that same region there, flipping back between the wind speeds and that extra little vorticity. That's why there is that tornado risk across portions of the upper Midwest today. The other thing that this map helps show is you can see some of that lee side troughing and how storms fire in this general troughiness out across the central high plains and into the Front Range, and then kind of propagate east from there. So a good look at that as well on this map. Let's go upstairs a little bit and look at the jet stream level winds. And this shows us some interesting things here going into today, this week, as well as into a building heat dome out across the west and also into the northern plains. But generally, we start out here on Wednesday. You can see the jet stream is kind of oriented like this across the North American continent. A little bit pushed north, and that's pretty common this time of year. But in general, we have zonal flow from west to east across the jet stream. As we put things into motion, you'll see a couple of those little jet stream activities move through. You'll see this frontal boundary that may spark some more severe activity into Thursday and Friday, push a little bit further into the central US, into towards the Ohio Valley. Although generally, though, we still have essentially zonal flow. Where it gets interesting is into the weekend. That's where we start to see a building ridge and an amplified pattern. The jet stream starts to dip off the Pacific coast. You can see that pushes more of an amplified pattern. And in response to that dip out off the west coast, we have a building high pressure over the Four Corners. This may prolong some of the fire risks that this area has had over at least the last month or so, because high pressure does create sinking and dry conditions in general, as well as warming air. So that's why generally high pressure associated with warmer temperatures as well as fair weather conditions. As we go into Friday, still have mostly this zonal flow. You can start to see out across the Pacific, you can see a little bit of this amplification starting, but it takes a little bit for the atmosphere to respond to that. And as that amplification happens, Friday into Saturday, we start to really build and really amplify that new area of high pressure that will build from the Four Corners and pull across areas into the Rockies, especially the northern Rockies. And that is really going to start things to cook across this region. You can see this model run shows by Monday and Tuesday, we still kind of have that high pressure really dominating in here in the high plains. Very amplified pattern with that jet stream pushed way up across Canada. Now on the flip side, we may actually get on the back side of this high pressure some really pleasant conditions for this time of year, as at least for temperatures, it could be a little bit stormy, but on the back side of this high pressure and where that jet stream pattern takes us is cooler air from Canada funneling into areas of the Great Lakes, the Northeast, and even down into areas in the Mid-Atlantic. But that is one response to this high pressure, and the clockwise flow around the high pressure is bringing some cooler air from Canada back into some of those areas that were really hit by the last heat dome pretty hard in the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, and the Northeast. For this extra look, I added a few layers here with aguacero weather and added the 200 millibar wind speeds back on, but not the fill overlay, just the wind barbs. That allows you to really pick out where that high pressure is, and then I popped the high pressure logo on so you can really see it there. According to this model run, and that does vary a little bit, but generally hanging around the areas in northeast Colorado, that sort of area, the center of that high pressure. This one kind of puts it just south of Denver, according to this model run, but you can really see that area there of the triple-digit temperatures expected in some areas that don't get as many chances of triple-digit temperatures over the summertime. It's not like Texas and stuff where it's fairly normal. Generally, actually, fairly normal conditions across the south central US. Temperatures in the 90s, certainly hot, but not oppressive. But you can really also see on this model presentation and this graphic presentation, some of that northwest flow, even more northerly flow, dipping across the Great Lakes and into the Northeast, and some pretty pleasant temperatures, especially if you do like summertime and you like a little bit of warmth. 82 in Detroit, 87 Columbus, 82 Toronto, Ottawa, Quebec City, and portions of the Northeast, like 82 high temperature there around New York City. It's pretty nice to get outside to enjoy, and 77 in Boston. That sounds amazing. And you can even see some of these cooler temperatures, at least cooler for this time of year, stretching down into the Mid-Atlantic and the East Coast and portions of the Ohio Valley. And this is just one model run. Some varies a little bit, but and this is just one day, just kind of as an example of that. But that does continue. Even some cool nights across the Northeast and the Great Lakes, temperatures in the 50s. You can see again on this model run, it really starts to cook across the northern high plains on Monday. Similar temperatures across the East Coast. With some rain, it's actually going to be a little bit cooler also across the south. That's the other side of this. The flip side of this is some tropical Atlantic moisture. It gets kind of pooled in here, but also potentially some isolated severe risk. But I think the bigger threat is going to be flash flooding with a few days of pretty reliable precipitation, especially for this time of year, and kind of a flow off the tropical southwest Atlantic. Yeah, that is going to bring some rain down in here across the south, even into the Red River Valley at times. But the heat dome continues, looks like, into at least the middle of next week. For a quick comparison, I pulled the data, the same data, but for the GFS, the American model, and it's in pretty good agreement with the European model on this heat dome. That also gives confidence that this heat dome is going to develop starting this weekend and lasting into at least the middle of next week. That may be a conservative time frame. It may last longer than that, but at least confidently we can kind of say that both of those major models agree until about that point. But you can see the GFS, I pulled it from the same time frame, the afternoon on Sunday, July 12th. Essentially centered in the same location as the European model, maybe just a little bit more towards that north and northeast. Again, the models fluctuate, but generally around that area into southeast Wyoming, northeast Colorado, potentially extreme western Nebraska. That's kind of the center of the heat dome. It varies a little bit, but yeah, and the same areas essentially are highlighted in the GFS for some of those really hot temperatures. This is just the air temperature. This doesn't actually take into consideration the heat index, but I do think it's running maybe a little bit hot, but I think we still could see some 100s to 105s potentially for air temperature. And then these temperatures may be more representative of what the heat index could look like, close to 110, that sort of thing. But you can also see the GFS and the European model pretty much in agreement, almost actually fairly agreement in exact temperatures, but low 80s, upper 70s across a lot of the Great Lakes and the Northeast, and even dipping down into the Mid-Atlantic. And you can see a little bit of hint at some of those cooler temperatures that the GFS tries to model with the extra precipitation, some extra cloud cover across portions of the Southeast. This is a look, just a sample look a little further out, and it does kind of hint on the GFS that this heat dome may last for quite a while. You can see we have a really pronounced ridge still across the west and the Intermountain West and the Central Plains, and then a pretty pronounced dip still across the Northeast and the Great Lakes. GFS even hinting at some cooler temperatures, even cooler than what we were just talking about, going into late this next week and even into the next weekend. That would be like July 17th, 18th, 19th. That weekend could be on the cool side for this time of year across the Northeast. But you can see under that heat dome still kind of centers it around the Front Range. And you can see under that heat dome still pumping a lot of warm air, triple-digit temperatures into areas in Montana, South Dakota, Wyoming, Colorado, and spreading a little bit further east into portions of the Central Plains. Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma gets in on some of that hotter temperature action by the late portions of next week. Some models drift this more easterly and may bring some of those warmer temperatures into this area. This particular model run is kind of keeping it back here, so there's a little bit of disagreement. That's why we're at 201 hours. I generally don't like to go too much beyond that before we get into fantasy land, but this just kind of shows you some signs of this heat this heat dome may last for a pronounced amount of time. And just remember, in that northwest flow, with even those cooler temperatures, you can get rounds and clusters of strong to severe storms. So that may be something that lasts into next weekend as well. All right, and I'll leave you here on this quick cast with a current look at the temperatures. You can see already hot temperatures out in the southwest, even into late morning, starting to build some warmer temperatures across the Four Corners, and especially the southern plains already pushing into the 90s in Oklahoma, portions of Texas, as well as the southeast, Florida, and portions of the Carolinas, and then starting to heat up in the central plains, the Ohio Valley, and nice temperatures, I would say, for this time of year, starting out in New York City right now, and there they just updated. But yeah, getting a little bit hotter in some of those locations. And you can see that boundary across the northern tier. That's going to be a little bit of that spark for severe weather. Cooler to the north and warmer to the south. That's where we do have a little bit of convergence there with some different air masses. And then eventually we'll get more storms firing along the front range of the Rockies later as well. So pay attention to your surroundings of your outdoor activities in portions of the Great Lakes, in the Midwest, and into the plains later today. And then also, especially in the southeast this time of year, popcorn showers and storms, those general daytime thunderstorms. Do pay attention, especially if you have boating and outdoor activities, if you're at the beaches this week and today. And yeah, we've already had, I think, 4 lightning deaths so far in the summer here. Just a couple last week, I believe, as well. So that's 1 in Illinois, and then I think 1 or 2 in Florida recently. So that also shows you that it's a lot of times people think it's just a Florida thing, but lightning fatalities do happen year round, and also can happen really anywhere in the country, especially where there's outdoor activities and thunderstorms and those interact. Otherwise, stay tuned, click the bell icon, get notified when we go live, when we post new forecast videos. And if you're new here, give us a like and subscribe. That really helps the channel and get this no hype and science-based weather communication out to more people. As we've gone through the peak of severe weather season and continue to track severe storms through the summer, we'll have you covered for more live streams as well as more forecast videos. And then as we get into hurricane season, especially towards the peak of hurricane season, we'll have you covered tracking those tropical troubles as well. Thanks again, stay safe, and have a great Wednesday.